Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary, has resigned. In a letter to the Prime Minister, which we've just seen, he says, I can reflect that the Ministry of Defence that I leave is now more modern, better funded and more confident than the organisation I took over in 2019. He's been Defence Secretary for 4 years. He said it's been his 9th as Minister, so it's time for him to step away. He said, we both share the belief that now is the time to invest in defence, he told the Prime Minister, who thanked him for his service. He said, I fully understand your desire to step down after 8 years of exacting at ministerial duties. I know you have more to offer public life, both here and internationally. Matt Chorley, off of the Times Radio, is here to explain more. What do you make of this departure and what they were saying there?
Well, I mean, it's not a surprise. I mean, there was a time when the Defence Secretary was resigned, when we'd have been rushing on the air to say this is a massive crisis.
Yeah.
We knew this was coming because he told the Sunday Times back in July that he wanted to step back from frontline politics. Back then, in that interview when he spoke to Tim Shipman, he said he'd spent 7 years with 3 phones next to his bed. And when Tim Shipman asked him why, he said secret, secret and secret, because he'd been the security minister before, he's been defence secretary since. There's a lot of secret phones you have to deal with. It is a 24/7 job, even in relative peacetime. And clearly what's happened in the last year or so with Ukraine very much hasn't been peacetime. What's slightly interesting about this is that back in July, Ben Wallace was saying, when the next reshuffle comes round, I've told the Prime Minister I'm going to step back from the Cabinet. And then we assumed that as and when Rishi Sunak did a reshuffle, Ben Wallace would depart as part of that. What we think is going to happen today, although I'll be honest, Number 10's been quite tight-lipped about it today, but despite my best efforts this morning to prise their lips open, we think this is going to be a very small reshuffle, and the big reset, the long-promised Rishi Sunak reshuffle reset, will come later in the year.
So is the logic that it won't be someone from elsewhere in the Cabinet moving into this role?
Yeah. So there are various names around. John Glenn, who I don't need to tell you, is currently Chief Secretary of the Treasury, is one of the names in the frame, partly because it's the most junior sort of current cabinet minister.
Yeah.
Also, and the interesting thing about Ben Wallace's letter is he talks about, he thinks it's the most well-resourced. And I know you've always understood that defence needs lots of money and you put a Treasury man in there and they suddenly start trying to find savings again. And so that'll be interesting. Grant Shapps apparently in the frame, possibly. Lara Spirit saying in Red Box this morning that apparently he was chairman of the Ukraine All-Party Parliamentary Group for half a day last year before becoming Home Secretary. And weirdly, Liam Fox, The Telegraph, saying...
Fit is he?
Liam Fox's name is in the frame, who, listeners with longer memories remember, he was the Defence Secretary at the beginning of the coalition but had to resign under, I think it's fair to say, quite a cloud. So that would be, as one person, Number 10, described it, not impossible, but eccentric. So we'll see how that pans out. But yeah, we don't think it's going to be a big reshuffle right now. Quite why, I don't know, because it means there'll be loads of speculation then about what happens later.
But white smoke between 10 and 1.
I think it's fair to say there'll be some white smoke between 10 and 1.
Yeah.
At the very least, I'll be playing my ridiculous reshuffle jingle.
Do you think he'll be sad, Ben Wallace? Because, you know, he was supposed to get that big job and, you know, things
Well, exactly. So I think all this started because he was hoping to go for the NATO job and then that all fell apart. And actually, they just, the current guy decided to stay on. I think by that point, maybe thinking about a new job, you know, it's like when you start, when you apply for a job. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't do this.
No, neither would I.
Would
you, Luke? No.
If you when you apply for a job somewhere else, if you don't get it, you've already mentally halfway out the door. So I wonder if there's a bit of that. There's also, you know, the fact that essentially, because defence is such a big and sensitive job, he can spend between now and the next election lining up what I imagine will be some lucrative jobs in the defence industry.
Yes.
Matt,
indeed.
Thank you. Matt Chorley, more from him live from 10 when maybe Ben Wallace's replacement as Defence Secretary will be announced.